Let's welcome our next speaker, Kelvin Amon. Kelvin is an assistant professor of dairy business and economic development at UW Platteville and a Dairy Innovation Hub funded faculty member. His research focuses on economic strategies to improve profitability and resilience on small and mid-sized dairy farms. Welcome, Kelvin.
Can I get it? Yeah, it was a trick. I have to follow tradition. All right, so moving away from consumers, we're going to be talking about producers. And this time is, should we contract or expand? And basically, we're trying to look at the drivers of business growth decisions in Wisconsin. And this work was collaborated with Mohamed Azar. So thank you, Azar, for this. So first of all, this looks small. But since the 1960s, the whole idea has been to expand or expire when it comes to businesses, and especially ag businesses. And that trend has followed through to a certain extent where we're seeing most of the whole consolidation and ag businesses become more than any other industry in the United States. And specifically, when you look at that consolidation trend for milk, especially the dairy industry, that has increased about 16-fold compared to other industries, and which means that we've all heard that word before, consolidation. But in the milk industry, it is higher than we expect. But one other thing that we've also seen is that whilst the consolidation is somewhat bringing us closer to an expected end where we're getting that money, producing more, we're also seeing some negative externalities come in here. And mainly, that externality is making it difficult for small startups and mid-sized farms to keep afloat. And when we look at a case of Wisconsin, we're mainly large or majority is small-scale and medium-sized farms, and we're trying to keep those farms available. So one thing that we sought to think about this is, first of all, when it comes to the decision to exit, it has been treated as an economic choice. So how do we model the decision to also expand in that same way? And we thought about it in many ways, especially these expansion or contraction decisions also can be captured in the same approach, basically thinking along the lines of operational policy environment. So these are the factors coming into play. Some may also be mainly internalized by the growers, maybe age. We want to leave it's time for us to close up shop. Sometimes maybe we're facing too many consolidations, pressures from other places. We cannot meet the supply. And for instance, learning today is we're learning that some of these buyers of raw milks products tend to pin farmers against each other. So if you can do a better job, I go with you. And that is also captured out in some of these interactions. And so I've laid them out here, as you can see, financial, structural, farm levels, and others. But our research motivation came up from this whole idea. And we're seeing it being that the exit literature or the farm exit literature has provided enough ideas about, insight into structural changes. And all of these can be somewhat thought about as the opposite is true. But how sure are we that the opposite is indeed true? And that's where this research comes in. So especially Key made a very emphatic statement that says that the decision that we're making to exit may not necessarily be, or the drivers of these may not necessarily be the same for which we are either expanding or contracting on a particular basis. So our expansion could be maybe we're expanding only cows, but maybe contracting land. Is it because land values are high? Is it because I can sell my land and make more money and make me more profitable? Or I could grow alfalfa on those land and give me some extra cash. So that thought also goes into it, and not just about exit. So we decided to go ahead, and our objectives is to understand these drivers of business growth intentions, and basically think about these two areas or directions. Now, the direction to expand, dairy herd only, cropland only, or both. Or how does this compare, or these individual changes or these expansions compare with the status quo where you remain the same in the business? What is going to drive me to expand as opposed to the status quo of just staying the same? Now, to do this, we used the Dead Cap Dairy Survey in 2024. If you cannot see, please squint with me. And Yes, so question 22 specifically, and it asks us, do you think this operation will still be a dairy farm in 5 years? And if yes, please answer the following questions. Now, the first question is, how many cows do you anticipate in the 5 years? And you can say fewer cows, about the same, or more. And then the next question is, how many acres of cropland do you expect, or do you anticipate this operation will crop in the next 5 years? And same answers but this one, a new term is added, none, fewer acres, about the same number of supposed to be acres, and more acres. Now, this is how we identified our strategy. Now, follow me carefully if you've never done this before. It's a maze effect. So corn, and then we have crop. So few, same or more, few, same and more. So if you have few on both sides, we assume that you're contracting. If you have few and same, we assume that you're contracting on some other level, which is cow contraction. And if you have, more few cows and more for the land, cropland, we're assuming that you're expanding land only. And same thing if you're contracting for only few cows, and none for land, there's some form of contraction in there. So we follow that same. And for status quo, you're basically staying same for crop and cow. And then when it comes to cow, more, and then few crops, you're expanding only cow, and same here. If you're saying same for crop, you're also in other ways, you're expanding for cow. But last year, you can see here, both expansion, where you're expanding in both directions for cow and cropland. And lastly, cow only, when you expand only cow, and probably you have nothing for cropland. So that's how we code it. So our choices become both expand, contraction, cow only, land only, versus the status quo, where the status quo is you're maintaining the same level, so no change. And to do this, we follow the mutually exclusive outcome approach, which is a multinomial logic approach. And basically what we're assuming is that every choice is mutually exclusive. It doesn't rely on each other. So your choice to expand each direction is mutually exclusive. And that idea, we follow the unordered choice model by Green. So spare me if you do not understand. Basically what we're saying is that your satisfaction, think about this utility as your satisfaction is controlled by or is affected by a vector of some observable things you see on your farm versus some stochastic things or random things that influence that decision. And you would almost always, all of us here, how many of you like ice cream? How many of you feel satisfied with ice cream? That satisfaction is driven by something. So you always go for a choice or the option that gives you that high satisfaction. That is the whole basic underlying idea from here. So please, these are not to make you throw up. It's not salad. It's just statistics. So do not be scared. Yes. So the one here is going to be our status quo, and greater than 1, J, the option greater than 1 will be this probability outcome. So we code it as this, where your choice. So 1 is status quo, 2 is to contract, and 3 land only, 3 land only, 4 cow, and then 5 is you both expand. That's how we code it in our empirical analysis. And the X here is just farm characteristics, and J, 2, 3, 4 are the options: contract, land only, cow only, and both expand, as opposed to the status quo, which is 1, which is staying the same. So our data, we, as I mentioned earlier, we use the dead cap data. So the dead cap data is basically the mailed out in 2024, administered by Wisconsin Dead Cap, and we can see that the sample size that was received was the response received was 30%. And we also had to do some data cleaning, and we took out a few things, and we were left with about 1,022.5 usable. But I compared that with the sample representative with the most recent Ag Census data to see how our herd size compared to what we have, to give us an idea. And you can see here that when you look at herd size, 50 to 199, Wisconsin survey has more farmers, represented here than the Ag Census data. But also across all the other categories, you can see that there's some difference, but it's not that huge. So giving us an idea that when you look at farm size, we may have some representative data there to give us some insight into what is happening in Wisconsin. So we go into our summary statistics, but surprisingly, looks like most of our farms here are mostly conventional, which is not surprising, as I said. The irony, yes. Now, most of the Farms also get regular vet care, but I'm interested in the investment and also anticipated labor. So you can see about 24% of the farms anticipate, needing labor in the next 2 years, and most farms, about almost nearly 60, tend to work with some conservation professionals on their farms and some nutrition management plans as well, and also have a nutritionist come onto the farm often or regular visit. And investments, you can see the investments kind of split across almost various areas, and you can see agritourism having the lowest, and as well as other automated feeders. Now let's run through, and also the next part, which is succession plans, where it's become a huge topic in recent years. And you can see that about 55% have identified a successor going forward. And also, when it comes to this side, the confidence in succession plan. And you can see about 42% having that confidence in their succession plan that it's indeed going to work, with about the rest saying, I'm not so sure. But if you don't have confidence, please do have some confidence. It will help us. And also, we can see that most of the off-farm, off-farm household incomes, it's like most farms or most people tend to get most of their income from their farm job. And just a few people get, some small balance, which is about between 1 to 25% from off-farm income. Now, when it comes to the age, it's pretty much straightforward as we know it. So I'm not going to waste a lot of time on the operator age. And we can see the distribution is now between 35 years to about 64 years, and with the old generation, 65 or more, kind of fading out a bit. Now, to the results. Now, the marginal effect here from our model is telling us the percentage points that would influence that decision. So when you look at successor identified, you can see there's a 12.2 percentage points chance or likelihood that this would increase the drivers for people or farmers to expand in both directions, whether cow and plant only. So we can see here that about 12.2 percentage points influenced by successor identified. So identifying a successor tend to push you in a positive direction towards you expanding both ways, so you going both ways. And also anticipating labor need, because it's become more labor intensive. So we're needing that. Although AMS is coming in, I'm not sure we've transitioned fully to that AMS scale yet. So we still need labor. And being able to identify or needing or knowing that you would need labor in the future tend to help you plan carefully and also expand in the next 5 years. Next is conservation professional. Working with them also helps you. And my question is, are they getting any sort of benefits from working with these conservation professionals? Are they getting any remunerations from the government or anticipated payback? That would also tend to influence their choices. And also the milking system, not as high. But when you look at this value, which is confidence in a successor or confidence in the succession plan, basically tend to reduce it, which is, I'm finding very strange, that if you have confidence in your succession plan, why would you decrease that direction to, or that willingness or likelihood of expanding both ways? And I'm trying to explore more on that. So if you have any answer for me, please wait at the end, I'll take it. And next, we can see what the age 65, either age, we're seeing that they both negatively influence the expansion directions, which leaves us in a limbo. Now, my question is, why is it that the old generation are leaving and the young generation are not willing to take up? What is the inconsistency there? Why are we in that limbo? Is it that it's not attractive to the younger generation and the older generation? Please go ahead, Pete.
Is it the size of the farm? Did you do that?
Yes, we did the size of the farm, and it didn't have any effect on that. So, yes. So we're wondering, why is it that the age is not pushing enough? And I'm curious about how is it, and that will be, I think, Megan's talk very soon when she's going to be talking about the youth program. So, yes, so I wanted to know, that's why we're finding what can we do to motivate this younger generation to push into the business as opposed to as the old folks tend to leave. Now, the next one is both cow and crop-only expansion. And as we can see, labor need is very important from these outcomes. And also, agritourism investment tend to increase expansion or investment for land only, because it looks like agritourism is tending to base towards more land outcomes, and as we're seeing. But one other thing I'd like to also acknowledge is regional effect, and which is the Northeast region. We're seeing that it tend to decrease the the chances of expanding land only. But also when we controlled for the southeast region, we're seeing the same thing. And we it wasn't significant, but our conclusion was that using the urban sprawl growing up in these areas, we're seeing that farms are being moved out, and so there's less expansion. And also I asked about the southwest Wisconsin area, and I heard that place is really fertile for land, which for crop production, but not for dairy. And I'm asking, why is it that if that is the case, we're not also seeing any effect in that area that is significant and is drawing our attention to it? But then we're seeing concentration coming towards the central part of Wisconsin for dairy programs, and we're trying to tease a way to control for that as well. Now, that leads me to the implications, and we're seeing that labor availability is a signaling effect to see expansion, dairy business expansion, and also successor identification. But also successor identification is not a uni decision. It has to be a multi-dimensional approach where you also have to have confidence in the successor you identify. That is a way of grooming and identifying to help expand the business. And that creates trust in the business going forward from generation to generation. And also one other thing is that land expansion is not in itself an end goal. It's rather a basis. It's a form of investment towards more expansion in cow or dairy business. And not just that, one other thing is, now, how long would it take farmers to expand with the land? Is it, given the land values right now, is it profitable to buy the land or rent the land? And how do we expand on the land? Now, that is the question we're trying to tease out from the data and see how best we can answer these questions. So on that note, I'd like to end here and welcome any questions. And please don't forget, I asked you a question. If you have your answer, I need it. Thank you.
Okay, question.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, thanks, Kelvin, for that. I think you did a nice job of making use of some information from the DATCAP survey to look at it in a little bit different way and ask and answer some questions. I don't have an answer to your question. Sorry about that. But I do have a question about the way the question was phrased in the DATCAP survey was really about my expectation for my business within the next 5 years.
Yeah.
And so seems that the results you're reporting are really about an expectation or a forecast on the part of the decision maker rather than actual observed behaviors. So I guess what I would say is, can you think about a way to design a study, and maybe with some support from DATCAP, I'm looking at Randy over here, to actually track whether the behaviors that you are projecting, or the farmer's projecting, tracked with what actually occurred, to better understand not just the expectation part, but the reality of how that worked out. I think that would be actually a nice compliment, I think, what you've already done.
Which would be that if we're able to, which DATCAP will have to help us, because they would be able to identify the respondents to this previous survey, and then we can be able to do a follow-up in the next 5 years to see their growth, or even the next 2 years to see their growth decision so far, and also see the so the pre-period, the in-between, and then the post 5 years, and then we can be able to track those outcomes and see those who fell off and those who are going. And looking at Randy, would you be willing to help us? I mean, thank you for the identification strategy, but that would be a good way to start, because at least with about 20% of that 30% would be telling enough to give us a direction as to what we're seeing and we're observing.
Okay, additional questions from the audience? Well, maybe one more before break, if you don't mind. I have a question. So thanks for chatting about consolidation. So my question is, you were sort of framing expansion as an investment in the farm, but do you ever think of contraction as an investment? You mentioned mostly conventional agriculture, but we see value added in organic agriculture, grass-fed. Are there other ways that we're thinking about contraction as value added for farms that don't require more land or more cows, which have other externalities that you pointed to?
Good question. So, well, yeah, but in that regard, with construction, I'm thinking about organic production, especially, which means that it starts really slow and very small. And that is, I'd say, that's what we've been leaning towards, to help farmers be able to transition between those two, to help with the diversification. Especially now we're hearing the beef on dairy cow narrative, but then the other narrative that is also going to always stay is the organic production, which has more value to it. So in that contraction, are you contracting to produce more organically, which is going to take some time before you see that yield. So that is also in there. But unfortunately, with the dead cap data, you can see that for organic farmers, those are really small. And I'm curious to also do a subsample analysis for those groups to also see their expansion decisions and what they have in mind. So thank you.
Okay, so join us and we'll take a 5-minute break and then we'll come back and have a few more. So thank you again for our first round.